All right, everybody, I think it's time to begin. I want to say good morning because that's where I am at, but I'm sure we are spread out all over the country and we may have some people in the afternoon. My name is Reed Blythe. I'm with GTRI. I'm a pre-sales engineer. Your presenter today will be Jim Moore. Jim Moore is a CCIE in collaboration with GTRI. He supports Navy sales. I support what we define as civilian scientific, which is the civilian NASA, DOE, things like that out here on the West Coast. I would recommend that everyone download the files that you see on your screen. This is a transcript of the slides, the logins that you'll need to get into the lab, and then also the labs itself. This is a very good session. This is a very well attended session. You will get access to actually playing around with Splunk today. You will also, which is not maybe immediately apparent, this is actually running on Amazon Web Services. So as we all hear about cloud services, you will be using cloud services today. And this will be up until midnight tonight, Denver time, so Mountain time. So by all means, if you don't get through the labs, and certainly if you want to play with them more, which I would highly recommend, this will be available until midnight tonight Mountain time. You'll have full access until that time. So as I mentioned, Jim will be your presenter today. And also, I have mentioned a few times, but very important, any questions whatsoever, because we are all muted, please put them in the chat window and I'll be responding to them. And I think with that, we will turn this over to Jim Moore.
Okay, thanks, Reed. So today, guys, we're going to look at Splunk Fundamental class. This is a beginner's class. This assumes you don't know too much about Splunk. We're going to show you guys what Splunk can do in an operational environment. We're going to take a look at the GUI, or the web interface. Like Reed said, this is a working lab, so each user is assigned their own lab space. Go to the next slide. So each student, and he mentioned this, needs to download the file transfers. I believe that I've got those up correctly. We had somebody test them to make sure. Something that I hadn't done before, so I had to kind of work through it right before class begins. But if these files are not, these transfers didn't automatically pop up, then you can get the materials by going to, and this is in WebEx, go to File, and then down to the Transfer button, and then you should see 3 files loaded there. There's the first file is going to be the slides, the same PDF that I've got shown up on my screen. The second file is going to be the lab document. This is a live working lab, as he mentioned. So we're going to log in and play with Splunk. Splunk is very easy to set up on your own system to play with it. But what's a little bit more challenging is getting the data into Splunk so that you can, look at the data in an operational environment. And that's what the challenge is that you can take a look at things as data is being collected. So you got to generate the data. So he said the lab's going to be open until 12 midnight Denver time or East Coast time. I'm over here on the East Coast. Reed's actually out there on the West Coast. So at some point late tonight, you'll have time to kind of get in there. The third file is that user login document. I'm going to try to share this real quickly.
And also I would point out, if anyone does not have a login, we do have some people get on that maybe weren't fully registered, please ping me in chat and I will assign you a login.
Okay, and so hopefully you guys see that login sheet. As you can see, the password is GTRI1, capital student 1 for student 1, and so on down the list. So just make sure that you guys, that you log into your own lab, because we want to give each of you guys your own sandbox to play in, and we don't want users to step on each other. So it's very easy once you when you log into the lab, is to change your password once you're in there, and that makes sure that no one else can be working on your lab. So the first lab that we're going to do today, we're going to go through some slides first, is actually using this login sheet to connect in. So I'm going to try to get back to the slides. So, Reed, I believe you see the slides now?
Yes, see the slides.
Okay.
WebEx housekeeping.
Okay, so I'm going to have to throw on my marketing hat real quick. I'm a sales engineer for GTRI. Rita is also, so we want to make sure you guys are familiar, just a tidbit about who GTRI is. I'm actually going to skip to the next slide real quick. So you know, we are GTRI. We're not Splunk. We're an elite partner with Splunk, so we're one of the first in the U.S. to reach that certification. We're a certified Splunk training partner. We have a guy named Scott Anderson. He's a Splunk guru. Works for us. He teaches a lot of the Splunk courses. He's actually subcontracted by Splunk to teach their own courses. So GTRI is that end-to-end support for Splunk. We do pre-sales, which is what I do. We sell licensing. We do professional services. We do training. We really try to position ourselves to be your start-to-finish, you know, solution for Splunk. So we provide this webinar to you guys and everyone's benefit, and that it helps educate you guys on, you know, what Splunk is, and also for those who might be interested in it, it gives you a place to, you know, go to get support as well. So I believe this slide's a little dated. We actually have at least 8 or 9 certified architects now, and I know a lot more SE1, SE2s. I'm an SE1. Reed is an SE1. Let me go back to this previous slide. So, you know, GTRI works with a lot of federal and commercial clients. We have a lot of federal certifications. We're ISO certified. We have various contracts. I actually focus on the Navy down here in Charleston. So we have a lot of government contracts down here. We sell hardware and, you know, Splunk services to a lot of folks throughout the U.S. So my last marketing slide right here. So we have a lot of manufacturing certifications, not just with Splunk, but a lot of the major vendors, Cisco, VMware, Citrix, NetApp, and of course Splunk as well. So I think that puts us in a unique space, and we know a lot about the hardware that's generating the data, but we also know a lot about Splunk that analyzes the data. So I think we kind of cover both angles, where some of our other vendors might just cover the hardware, or they might just cover the Splunk. Well, we cover both angles, so I feel like we've got a good, compelling story. So the agenda for today is to provide Splunk fundamentals. So we will have slides, which we're going through right now. We have labs, which are incorporated throughout the webinar, where we'll be silent so that you guys can focus on the lab. About 5, 10, some of them are 15 minutes long. I'll show you some demonstrations on Splunk and show you guys what Splunk can do. So this is our topics. I'm just going to go ahead and skip this slide. So Splunk Overview. We don't assume you guys know what Splunk is. So a good definition is you know, Splunk's the platform for looking at big data or machine data. This is information that's generated by machine, and Splunk, in their tagline, makes that data accessible and meaningful for, you know, everyone. So I'm not going to just run through slideware today. I know you guys probably get tired of listening to me do that. So I'm going to pull up my Splunk instance and need to share it. And Reed, I'm only checking with you because I'm bad at knowing what's sharing or not. Do you see the Splunk instance on there?
Yes, we do.
Okay, cool. So this is the default page that comes up. This is, and I'm just going to go over here to the main point of what Splunk does, which is it sits out there and it collects data, and it's an aggregation point of the data. So if we hit the search and reporting, we're going to be brought up to a main page, and it says search, right? So search that data. If I do a star, that means everything. And let's do it, you can go over here and switch the time. You can do real time, so we'll do 5 minutes, and we'll search on 5 minutes. So not necessarily would you, well, Never mind. This is actually a good point. If you do a search, 5 minutes is fine, because no matter how big your data is, that's not too long of a case. So that's a good way to do it. So this is all these various messages coming in right here, and there's a lot because it's getting generated. This is from every source that we have and every type of message that they can send. You know, some of these are log files. Some of them are various performance metrics that is monitoring on Linux systems. Some of them are looking for vulnerability scans. Some of them are scripts running on databases. So right now, what we're looking at is it's 5 minutes ago, from 5 minutes ago to now, in real time from multiple machines. It might be, you know, different versions of the same type of machine, so 2 to 3 firewalls, but it's all coming in from 2 to 3 different sources. So, you know, this stuff is good. It looks great. But, you know, there's so much data that it really isn't useful to watch it come in like this. So what you can do is write dashboards, and we'll see that later today, and, you know, applications on top of Splunk that make this data a little bit more useful. I'm actually going to go back to the main page. So as you see, this is an app that's loaded. We'll talk a little bit more, but I'm just kind of giving a brief introduction. This is called the Cisco Security Suite. This is an application that we have within Cisco. You know, so we saw that information that was coming in was scrolling across, was kind of confusing. Now that information is being processed in real time in charts that in information that's a little bit more a meaningful fashion. So you get the raw data coming in, but the charts really put that data into a more meaningful representation, like looking at, you know, IP addresses, you know, throughout the world. See, so you can look at things like, you know, the top threats coming in from malware over here, access lists, source IP, destination IP. That's this data getting mapped to these different areas and stuff like that. Another, I gotta go back to the main page. So some of these, this is Splunk on Splunk. So a lot of these are different applications. Actually, let me go back to the security suite. So this is a partnership between Cisco and Splunk that kind of pulls up these charts and stuff like that. You can modify this data to be what you want. So you don't necessarily have to have it displayed this way. This stuff is very easy to specify what you want. But this is kind of the end game. So the intermediate step is to use Splunk as a searching capacity, you know, for investigation, and that's what we're going to do today. So Splunk is a great tool for investigation, pulling in information, and doing the root cause analysis. So we're going to go back over to what I call core Splunk, which is, this is what it is right out of the box. We'll do the star search again. That's pulling in all the information. And instead of doing a 5-minute real time, we'll do the last 60 minutes, and we'll do a search on that. So this is now not a rolling window. This is a snapshot rather than a rolling window. So it's everything from the last 60 minutes that came through the system. So all of these right here, you can call these, some people might call them your log files, as a lot of people would say. But that's not always, entirely true, because this could be a network feed, or it could be, like a syslog feed. It's all the data that were gathered in the last 60 minutes. So let me go back over to the slides. If I just do this. So So kind of showing you the ad hoc searches, data collection type stuff, and then the dashboards that you can create. Okay, on to the next slide. So how is Splunk used? Some traditional use cases, this is where you're going to see it a lot, is for security. That's usually a pretty big one, especially in DoD, which is what I'm focused on. Network operations centers, security operations centers to monitor, apps, log files. But doesn't care what the data is. It does not care if it's technical data or Twitter data. There's an app out there that will take Twitter feeds and run analysis on those. So there's various companies have a Twitter presence and and they want to know what the chatter is about out there to see if there's something wrong with maybe their website. So even before someone reports their website down, maybe Twitter can tell them that it's actually going down. So it can look at technical firewall data, or it could look at Twitter data. So some other things that we've seen over here on the custom side is SCADA. So SCADA data is operational data. This could be petroleum trucks who are coming in to get filled up with petroleum, and depending on who they are, what company they work for, they're going to get different additives to get added to their petroleum. So they've got a different mixture for each company. So that I've seen people be able to use Splunk to monitor what additives are getting added to what trucks. Election data. There's a Splunk for Good app out there. So all the election contributions, that's public data. So they've got an app that's able to track all the what each of the campaigns is receiving in competition, for all the money that's coming in, basically. So energy consumption. So a lot of the different breaker panels will tell you how much current is going through them, so you can look at this data. So if you're interested in bringing Splunk into your organization, then a good link is this one right here. Try not to click on it, but highlight it. So this is not affiliated with Splunk. It shows a lot of good use cases. Sometimes they'll mention the actual companies that are doing that. If the companies don't want to be mentioned, then it'll do it by sector. It'll kind of say this sector has been doing this kind of stuff. It's got a lot of government data, and it kind of shows the good return on investment that a lot of folks are getting from doing that. All right, so move on to the next slide. So the architecture, main Splunk server functions. So I want to talk about how Splunk is set up. This can be a pretty huge topic. We're going to just brush on it real quickly here. So Splunk is a multi-server topology. So there's a set of servers out there that, for one of them will serve up the web page or the GUI and initiate the searches called on the search engine, just like I did. You saw me log into a web page and start doing some searches. That's called the search head. There's another layer which is called the indexer. This is really the workhorse of the Splunk architecture. This is what pulls in all the data. It parses it out, and then it runs searches back to them from the search head. So when I hit the search button, it's sending a batch file over to the indexers to start looking for that stuff. Then you have the forwarder, which this is the agent which you load onto the devices you want to monitor. This is a way to securely and safely forward data over to the indexer. So the Splunk server could be one or all of these roles. The server that we have out there on AWS that we're going to be doing the lab, that's going to be one server that's running all of these functions. This is more of a lab environment only, but Splunk can be a Lego block type architecture where you build out servers to increase your size and scalability for whatever hierarchy you need or architecture you need. So it can be definitely stacked and split different ways. And this kind of shows you both of those. So this shows a single server example on the left, where a single server can handle all of the functions, or you can scale up to a larger enterprise design where you have multiple search heads, you have indexers, and you have thousands of forwarders sending that information into the Splunk instance. You could have multiple trees where we see, this is one tree in this example, but you could have, say, 4 data centers where you have a tree in each of the data centers. So it can get complex that way. So you can put together whatever architect makes sense depending on how your data resides. This is probably a good place to talk about the licensing model. So it doesn't matter to Splunk. It doesn't matter how many servers you have out there. It's all about how much data you are indexing. So if you're indexing 5 gigabytes per day, then you pay for that. It doesn't matter, how long you keep the data or how many people search on the data. It's just how much data you index per day. So obviously, though, if you deploy more servers, the physical hardware does have a cost. So there's a physical device cost to that, but that does not increase a cost to Splunk licensing. So the next question that comes up is, what operating systems does Splunk work on? So we've made this slide, kind of a word cloud because things change, quite often. So at the bottom of the slide right here, click on it, highlight it, not click on it, but at the bottom of the slide right here, this is a link to the Splunk documentation. This gives you the system requirements to, what operating system Splunk runs on. So, but essentially, Splunk runs on, Windows and Unix, 32-bit, 64-bit operating systems. Each Splunk install works generally speaking the same. It's got the same zip desk, command line, network protocols. So it bridges operating systems. So, potentially you could have, a Unix indexer that's being searched by a Windows search hit. So you can mix modes, but generally speaking, it's best practices to keep all of the same platform. But that's not a technical instance. That's more of a maintenance issue, not a technical one. So almost, in any environment, almost all the Splunk instances that you're monitoring are going to be from, different operating systems, either Windows or a Unix style machine. So mixing and matching is completely fine, but, just from a best practices, you would only want to do it for maintenance issues. One important note down here, Windows, the binaries, include some extra inputs in their install because they are pulling in things from the registry that are binary. And Splunk is such a text-based, data source. And since Windows is, such a highly used system out there, that obviously it has to work. So there's some extra stuff built into the executable for Windows, mainly around event logs and registry, so that the Windows binary is pulled in. So that's kind of just a little difference between Unix and Windows, but when it's on there and installed and operating, you don't notice too many other differences and stuff like that. Okay, lab access. All right, so we're going to get you guys into the lab if you have not already made it there. So we're working in hands-on mode. The server to get there is this one right there. The credentials are in that logins.pdf file that I showed earlier that are part of your transfer. So we're going to spend 5 minutes doing the lab. I'm going to go over to the user login right here. I'm not going to hold this up. You guys probably have a hard time seeing this anyway. But if you guys could download this and use this to log in, make sure you get your right row, because if you don't, then you're going to be logging in as someone else, which will not only confuse you, but will confuse the other person that you did this to. So just try to be careful to find, the correct login. If there's any questions, just send a note to me or Reed. And if you're not on here, if you can't find your login, and we'll try to identify a new student login for you, so that way you're not logging into somebody else. So it is at 30 minutes past the hour. So I'm going to go ahead and say at 35 minutes past the hour, we will we'll return and go from there. So you won't hear me talk for another 5 minutes.
And as a reminder, everyone, any questions whatsoever, please post them in the Q&A.
Okay, cool. So we're going to go ahead and jump back into it. It's 35 past the hour. So actually, one of the cool things that Splunk does is that displays its own internal log, so it monitors itself. So in this case, I've taken the top couple or the users, and just to do a scanning check that users can log in and reach their labs, and we know people can actually connect. So this is cool. It's just showing different users who are basically logging in and basically getting captured information that way. So we're going to get back to the slides. That's the document. All right. Read this. You don't have to answer, but if I don't have the slides up. So lab 1's done. We're going to go on to the next slide. So data collection. When we're talking about Splunk, we're talking about a lot of data. So the first topic is, Splunk doesn't create data, doesn't magically make it up. You have to point data to it. So like I said before, Splunk is licensed by how much data is processed per gigabyte of data. So, some of the questions to ask when you're with using Splunk as a solution is what kind of problems are you trying to solve? Where is that data located? Is it on disk? Is it a syslog? Is it a database query? All of those types of data are accessible, by Splunk. Is it a data feed, or are you just trying to, monitor a syslog file? So you want data to be searchable so that you can look at it, and that's going to affect on how large of disk space you need to store the data. So if you need to keep the data for, say, 7 years, then that affects the total amount of storage you're going to need. If you if you pay by the gigabyte of data per day. So you could archive it, but then if you do that, then it might not necessarily be searchable by Splunk. So you got to think about those storage needs. Also, is the data sensitive? So is it like social security numbers, phone numbers, things like that? You can set up ways in Splunk so that different users have access to different types of data or certain data, kind of like role-based authentication, but more so on what data they can access. But if you're going to give the system unlimited space, then you're going to need a really big disk. On the other hand, if you need to keep the data for 3 years or 30 days for regulatory reasons, then you can have Splunk just delete it off the disk, and set that up within Splunk. So data collection, where is your data? So Splunk gets data from all kinds of sources. As long as it's text, human readable, machine generated data, then you can pull it into Splunk. So these are things like log files, even badge readers can do this. Temperature readers within hospitals or things like that, or just any type of large facility. I've heard of a group that was monitoring aquarium fish tanks over the internet and then feeding that information into Splunk. So there can be a lot of different crazy use cases out there, but for the most part, your traditional data is going to be log files, and obviously syslog is a big one. So inputs. So there's different types of files that Splunk can take. This can be files or directories, which is monitoring different files that are on disk. So this could be a file on a disk of the search head, the actual guy who's not the indexer, or the universal forwarder for the search head, like it is in our lab. Or it could be on that universal forwarder, which is the agent that we typically install on the servers that we want to monitor. And this could also be network input, where you monitor a certain port number, say port 514, which is syslog on the network. So there's a lot of different stuff. Scripted inputs is another. So you can run a shell script or a batch script or even a Python program that then the output of that program then would get parsed by Splunk. So if you're a system administrator and you have certain scripts you like to run that provide you with key information, and you have it scheduled to run so often that you have your data in a repository, then you can have that data searchable over time by Splunk. Also Windows inputs, so these are Windows event logs, Active Directory, those types of things. File system change monitoring right here. So see when things are changed on your disk, which is a different way of looking at things. So okay, we're already to lab 2, exploring the Splunk interface. So we're going to look at we're actually going to look at the data that's coming into the environment. So we want to take a step-by-step discovery of the different files, sources and source types. Look for the keywords, keyword searches right here, and explore the search time range options too. So you'll be able to kind of mess around the last 8 hours and things like that. So again, that live document takes you step by step through that. There is a challenge section for those who have a little bit more time and want to try that. So it is, I have 42 past the hour right now. It looks like this is a 10-minute lab. So we'll return, I'll go ahead and give you just one more minute. We'll return at 53. I hate doing that. We'll do it 53 minutes past the hour. If I can type that up on the screen, I'll do that. But I'll pull up the lab document too. So here's lab 2. It looks like it's going to be 3 pages, including this challenge task right here. So we'll go at 53 past the hour and start it back up. If you have any questions, let Reed or myself know, and then we'll try to answer them for you. So, okay, I'll just start picking it up. I know that some of you guys might still be wrapping up this lab. I'll just mention again that the lab's going to be open up after this ends. So if you fall behind, or if I'm going a little bit too quick for you guys, you will have time to catch up and try to finish the labs later. So, all right. So hopefully you guys got a quick overview of how to use the interface. And let's go to lab review. Share the right screen. So you guys had a chance to go over the interface, and I'm going to jump in there in a second to go over that. But what we're going to do in the lab going forward is put together things like dashboards and ways of looking at the information a little bit different, and have a context to your directed searches, and put that information up on a dashboard and show that data in a useful format. And use some of the searches that you guys are creating right now. So I am going to move back over to Splunk, which hopefully, Reed, you can see. Just stop me if you can't. So
yes, you can see it.
Yeah, cool. All right. So there's I'm going to do some different searches here, just to kind of go over some of the things you guys started noticing. So I'm going to type in error and do an error star, so it receives it. I'm going to switch this to all time since we're in a lab. That way, make sure I get a whole bunch of data returning and stuff like that. So notice that when I do that search, it highlights why it's catching this data. It's catching error down here in these different places. So and some of these have lowercase e, and some of them have uppercase e. So it doesn't matter if it's a lowercase e or a capital case e. What I'm typing up here is not case sensitive. If you want to make it case sensitive, then you can put the cat search in by doing this. So and return. Now it should return only lowercase errors, and you can see that. So it's just pulling in nothing but the lowercase error type stuff. So the search language is, it's really flexible. We don't obviously have a whole bunch of time today to go into all that you can do, but just know that there's a lot of different stuff you can do. I'll show you a couple other things. So if we do fail and then star, notice that on this one, hopefully, and we do, we get a couple different types of failures. So the fail star match failure, match failed. I don't know if I've got any other types of failures. Yeah, so it matched failures down here, and it matched failure right here. So if we type in just fail and we don't have a star on there, then of course it's not going to match a lot of those. It does match this one right here. So it's still looking for things that are delimited properly, which a underscore right here matches that. So underscore, or if it had a space on either side of these things, then it would have matched that. You can do some other ones. So let's put fail star, and then we'll do the and password. So note that it matched, it matched this two terms, fail and password. So that's a little bit different of a search if I wanted to actually embed a space. So I didn't have to do, I'm trying to find one. So it matched password here, it matched failed right here, which is not failed password. So if we wanted it to do the space, then we need to put it in some quotations so that it matches exactly that. Let me put those in there. So yeah, so now we've got failed password. I didn't have to put the ED on there because of the star. And then it has to have that space in between. Also noticed that it actually highlighted the space this time too. So that's kind of how you know that it's actually matching and looking for a password. I might have mentioned this already, but I'll do it again. That, this command right here, that's got an and in there explicitly. So that search matched the same one that if I put, an all capital right there, fail and password. So that's the exact same search between the two. You can also use or right here or not as well, and can use parentheses sometimes to basically to force the order of operations of the or, ands, and nots. So it's a pretty powerful tool. It gets way bigger than this, than stuff that I know about how to search. I mean, it's very massive for you to be able to really dive in and find specific things. So we're going to go back over to the slide deck now, hopefully. So I'm looking at some key, concepts of the interface. So definition of an event. So an event is a single piece of data in Splunk. So this is a block of text associated with a timestamp from a specific source. A lot of times, this is a line in a log file. So that's, generally what you can think of it as. But when it comes from, say, running a script, it is the output of that script. Also, if we got data coming in from a database call, it's an output of that database call. When we talk about a network feed, it is the actual network message that it's picking up. But the easiest way is just to think, lines in a log file. And, that's a good way to think of it. If I can highlight, there's got to be a way to highlight. Well, anyways, if you guys, can you see my mouse, Reed?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so sorry. I wish I could just highlight some of this stuff, and I know I can. I just don't have time to figure it out. But right here, this is kind of a histogram at the top right here, and this is a way to kind of show how those events came in a timeline. This is configurable. You guys might not be able to see it, but there's 1 minute per column right here. So it's kind of showing you all of a sudden whatever was going on. There weren't that many events, and then all of a sudden it picked up. So it's a very fast way for you guys to kind of see, events and how and the amount of events coming in at a certain time, and that's configurable just by clicking on the 1 minute per column type thing and make it an hour per column or whatnot. So right now we see I'm going to zoom in too on this one. Hopefully you guys can see that. So there's 3 events right here, and right now this one should be the latest one. These 2 look like they came at the same time. So May 12th, 2014, same time, May 12th, 2014, and then this one is slightly half a second before. So these things are in chronological order, where the most recent is at the top. So it has so that's the order that they come in. You can switch the order, obviously, to go the opposite way. So that's configurable. Another thing is these fields over here. Let me get back to those. So each event has the following fields. The default field that every event has is the timestamp, host, source, source type, index. So no matter what, you're going to have those associated with it. So timestamp, that's obviously a date. Host is who it's coming from. Source could be a file name. This could be where it's a a network port that you're monitoring from. Source type is obviously is it a web server? Is it a Cisco ASA firewall? That type of thing. And then index. This is a little bit more detailed, but it's a repository, kind of like a table in a database where the data resides. So you could set up as an admin. You could set up indexes to logically separate the data that way. So the source type, though, that's an important one. Definitely. That's the log type format. So what device type are we trying to pull? Syslog from certain devices will be a certain source type. So you may have 15 Apache logs coming into your implementation. All of those are going to be the same source type because they have the same layout. They'll have the same 404 codes or URI, stuff like that. So source type, that's how Splunk pulls the data out of these logs. It knows when it gets a source type from an Apache server, it's going to know how to break out the status codes from there, what those things mean. So it's also a great way to, do your searches. So if you ever want to look at, say, all your web logs, then you can just search only on your Apache source type. Then that search would treat all disparate logs, if you're 15 different servers, as that one type, so you can basically search across all of them in one search. So source type is basically log file format, and is definitely an important field that you want to be familiar with when you're using Splunk. So we'll go more into fields. So fields are pulled out of events and pulled out in a composite sense. So I'm going to go try to get off the slide. I know that's probably boring. I'm going to go back over to the Splunk, and we're going to start doing some more typing. So source type, which I just did. So if I start typing, source type equals, it didn't pull up the one that I was actually looking for, but you'll see that it's actually got a lot of these already configured down here. So it's basically looking for, and actually I found the one that I was looking for. So basically, once you start typing, it kind of helps you fill in the things. That's one thing that's kind of a huge plus about Splunk, is that you don't have to actually know the whole entire code. You can start to do it. So this is actually the one that I wanted to come take a look at, is my Linux environment. So it modified my command line. I could have typed that out myself, or I can use that shortcut just to add it to the search. So over here, we obviously got a lot of events that we're looking at. Right here, where this little greater than sign is, if we click on that, then it's going to expand the information that's contained in the event and show some more data in there. And so this shows all the fields that were pulled out of that event. So I'm just going to try to write. So PID equals 14419. Somewhere down here, it should say PID. So it shows that a field, almost like a searchable field for all of these types of messages, got pulled out here, and that you can, from the same thing up there. We could try another one. Session equals, so session right here is the same one that's matching right there. And then you can basically see that as a field that gets pulled out. So each event might not return, all of the same events or same fields is what I meant to say. So on the back, my search up here, which was Linux audit, there's one host, there's one source, there's one source type. Out of all the messages received, 16 of them had, date hour fields in them. 60 of them had date seconds in them. So there's different messages, but a lot of those messages contain some of the same type of information, and those are called fields. And so we can see that. And so it's able to do this, on the fly, kind of pulling out the fields and stuff like that. All right, back to the slide. All right, so source type. So I've already talked about this a little. It's how, Splunk knows to pull out certain fields is based on the type of, source type that it is. There's a lot of different source types that Splunk already knows that are all pre-trained. Just highlight that. So you don't have to tell it, obviously how to pull this information out. There's a link down here at the bottom that if you want to go see what all the pre-trained source types are, you can take a look at this and see what's available. You can also create your own source types if you have, some type of event in your environment from a source that, Splunk does not know about. I will say an important thing is this Splunk Common Information Model. So if, this is, for example, if you have, proxy type data or say, network type data, and you want to pull out the same type of data for a certain field, for example, if one manufacturer calls source IP, and they call it, source by SRC, and that's their SRC is their title, and another manufacturer looks at source IP as just source, SOURCE, so they spell out source, and maybe another manufacturer has SRC_IP. Then, obviously different applications that are written will not necessarily pull that information, correctly from these different formats of labeling the data. So what this Splunk Common Information Model does is have applications conform to a certain format or naming convention for labeling the different field types. So if you define your own source type, then you want to make sure it complies with this Splunk Common Information Model, so that you can, properly pull out the fields. All the pre-trained source types, and there's a lot of them, so most of your entire environment is already going to be pre-trained anyway, because Splunk has, obviously this is their job, is to make these things work with all the different manufacturers and stuff like that. All of those, they do adhere to this model, so this is really just special case type stuff. All right. So Splunk Discovery. All right, so we're going to do a demo. So in this example, what if we had calls coming in? So we are a retailer online, and so we want people to buy stuff from us online. So if we have calls coming in because users are having an issue to make a purchase, that's obviously a big deal because we're in the business of selling stuff online. And we have a multiple tiered solution to provide this online, store. And since users can't make purchases, we need to figure out what's going on. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, start looking at the 3 tiers in our system. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my Splunk. Okay. So like I said, we're going to look at the various tiers, and there's 3 of them. And so we need to start. We have our Apache logs, which is our web. We have our WebSphere tier, and we have our database tier. So I'm just going to start at the front, the website side, and develop our search that way. So let me go ahead and so let's look at our website. So we're going to develop our search real quick. So the first thing I want to do is look at those Apache logs that I mentioned. And so I know my data, and this is where you gotta kind of know what your data looks like and stuff like that. So I know when I want to go look at my web servers that I need to look at source type. And I was hoping it was going to, I must have misspelled something. Yeah. All right, so I misspelled source. There it is. Source type, and I want to look at access combined. So that is in this example, these are all my web servers right here. All right, so we just did a search on that. These are all the events logs associated with our web servers. We've got source, one type, right? And then we've got 4 hosts. I wasn't worried about this one. So these first 3, these are the ones, and I'm just because I know this, these are the ones that are a web server front end. So, you know, my main concern is because of these purchases not going through is one of these hosts down. And right now I see that they are perfectly, you know, all 3 of them are load balancing right now. So I know, you know, that looks, you know, pretty good. They're all getting load balanced. They got information passing. So we need to dig a little bit further. So another field to kind of get into, since I already know that this is a problem, is I'm going to start looking at the codes that are getting generated in this application tier. So 200 codes, those are good. Those are OKs and stuff like that. 503 right here, that's a bad server error. And so, you know, that looks kind of high. The fact that it's at, you know, 10% right now, that doesn't look good. So I'm going to add this status. I want to just start looking at these 503 codes. All I've got to do is just click on this 503 right here, and it's going to automatically add that to the top up here. So now I'm searching just on, you know, web servers and 503 codes and stuff like that. So I'm going to look at my hosts right here, okay? And now I kind of see, okay, the same problem, now that we're just looking at these, that same problem is still spread across all 3 of the different servers. You know, if the errors were on a single Apache server, then you would know, hey, that's probably the problem. That server's having the problems. But since this is being spread across all the servers, then that probably means, you know, the problem is somewhere else. So right now, in my mind, this web tier, this looks okay. So I want to go ahead and move down the chain and see if there's other problems elsewhere. So we are going to go and look at a different source type. And this time, we want to look at our web sphere. So we're going to look at the web sphere TR log. We were trying to find it there. And we're going to search on that. All right, so we know that there's 503 errors coming in. We obviously got, when we search on that, we got a lot of different, you know, logs coming in. So we need to start filtering this stuff down a little bit or narrowing our search. We know those 503 codes are coming in. We know those are an exception. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for, you know, keyword search and see if there's, you know, match anything with exception in there also. All right, so obviously we have a lot of this stuff coming up. So you start looking at this, you see there's a lot of these little get policies and stuff like that. Well, these are exceptions, but these get policies, that's not part of, you know, the problem per se. And I'm getting a lot of that information back. So essentially, I need to get the exceptions that don't match to, you know, this get policy right here. So we can do a not, so we're just adding more stuff to the thing, and then get policy and search on that, and basically knock all of those out. All right, so now we're getting all of our exceptions, not with the get policy, and let's take a look at this. So there's an SQL type thing right here. I didn't mean to highlight that. This JDBC, there's another JDBC. Anything JDBC, that's all database errors. So essentially, you know, SQL, a bunch of these database errors popping up. That's kind of starting to lead me that maybe, you know, this problem is not here. It's a database issue. We can start looking at all these stuff, or we could just fly over to, you know, the database and see if there's any reports or errors going on over there. So we're going to go straight to my database, which is called my SQL D, SQL D, and then type that in. All right, so the first one that pops up is a, you know, shutdown complete. That's not good. So obviously we need to obviously look here. All right, so right here we have a disk is full writing message. It looks like a couple of those are popping up. That's bad. That's obviously, if your database is full and the disks are coming back and they don't have any space to write, then purchases are probably not going to happen because there's no way to record that information. So what I'm trying to show here is that you could filter down to something meaningful, and solve a problem. This is kind of a quick example to show us how to do that. And I'm going to allow you guys to kind of solve a similar problem. I actually need to start configuring some of the conditions for that to happen. So run some of the scripts in the background so that you guys can actually see those conditions happening. So I'm going to do that real quick. I'll get you guys onto this lab 3 right here. I'm going to jump out for a second and go get those scripts running real quick, and then I'll come back in and we'll set up for this lab real quick. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pick it back up. Just did some quick calculations, about 4 minutes off the pace I was going to do, which is pretty good, but we're just a little bit behind, so I'm going to try to catch it up a little bit here. So hopefully you guys had time to finish the lab. If you didn't, no worries, just try to finish it up after the boot camp is over. You still have access to the lab. So we're going to do a lab review real quick. So what did you guys just do or should have seen? So the idea of this lab, you would have looked at Concur, and you would have seen or get a set of events. And by looking at the status, there is a switch that happens, so there's a problem. You start getting these 404 errors, and after things have been fine for a while. So then, when you look at the remedy tickets, you see that there was a change ticket out there with a timestamp associated with it at a certain time. And then you look at the the firewall denied connection, and over time you see that they picked up around that same specific time. So there's a way to kind of see how all the results are related, and then you can move from one system to the next and kind of see how you can troubleshoot down a path based on seeing errors over here and finding the root cause analysis. So this is a practical way of looking through your data and finding problems, which leads us on to our next subject. So once you find problems like this, it's obviously important that you want to take that data and automate it. So it's not that friendly because you guys had to initiate all of this, but Splunk has a nice way to automate a lot of the stuff so that it finds these things for you. So we're going to move on. Let's skip that slide. That'll help us out a little bit. So, the first way to automate things is to save your searches, so saving searches. Then you have those searches saved that you can run whenever you want, as a report or put it in a dashboard panel at a later time. So in this case, the Save As menu right here, or right here where my mouse is, this allows you to save a report, a dashboard panel, or an alert. So an alert is essentially a search, but one that you just schedule to run it, and then obviously have it take some action after it reaches some threshold. So automation, the report knowledge object. So just so you guys know, anything you can save in Splunk, that's known as a knowledge object. So the report knowledge object is if you have a search that you have done and you have the Save As menu open, you can save it as a report, and it will save under reports. This way you don't have to reinvent your searches every time. Sometimes you can see how these searches get really long, and obviously if you find a key one that you want to use and you want to obviously use it whenever you need it, then you can obviously save that and just use it at a later time. So alerting is something you can do on any search that you can create. So if you can create it, then you can create an alert on it with a set of actions. You can have a list of trigger alerts. This could be send an email or activate a script. which is anything. A script is anything you can write in Python. So you can run a Java program, you can do a SQL query. If you see a high number of attempts for a connection from a specific IP, you can have a script that runs out and tells the firewall to block, that specific IP. So, some people might want to have a human in the loop for that type of thing, which is fine, but the capability is there. You can also submit entries into a ticketing system and have that automatically happen too, which is kind of cool. So, real quickly, how to create an alert is that you save a search as an alert, and when you do that, you have the same type of field to set up and then schedule it right here. So you can set it up to run, say, every week, Monday at 6 o'clock. So the trigger condition down here, it doesn't necessarily trigger an alert every time your search is ran. So the trigger condition can be set here, and right now it's the number of results is greater than 0. So obviously you're looking for something that if it happens one time, you want to know about it, obviously. So there's a lot of different settings that you can have here to kind of figure out what is going to be that triggered amount. And then you can have these triggered alerts. So what takes place after a trigger happens. This could be send an email right here. It could be run a script right here. If you check any of these boxes, then it gives you more options. So if you run a script, you have to tell it what script to run. If you send an email, you need to tell it, where to send that email to. There's this throttle button right here. If you only want to see an alert or, once a day, you have a way to throttle it back. So if you had something set to run every 5 minutes and it's being, the alert's being triggered, you might not want to receive an email every 5 minutes. So you have a way to throttle it and oppress it where maybe it only shows up once a day. So you can have the trigger, action. You can have the action triggered once the alert is triggered, or you can have the action triggered for every result. You obviously would not want to do that if you had, say, 300 503 errors, because that would, turn into you getting 300 emails. But maybe if you saw 5 users login attempts where 5 different users have an excessive amount of logins, then maybe that's 5 different tickets that you want to create in the ticketing system as an automation. So, that's one way to do it. So, reports, saved searches, and alerts. These are all really the same type of knowledge objects. Alerts are basically a search with a schedule assigned to it and an action assigned to it. If you go to the main menu, main settings tab at the top there, under knowledge, you can access your searches and reports. I'm going to try to share out my browser. I'll just show you guys from there. All right, there's Splunk. So settings, that's what I just said, settings, and then searches, reports, and alerts. This is one way that you can get to and see all of them listed. I'll probably have a bunch of them since I'm the admin on this system. And then save searches and alerts should be over here too. Sweet. Well, we'll move on. But there's a couple of different ways to get to those things. So back to the slides. So simple dashboard. So we're getting close to our next lab. So I'm going to go through these next 2 slides pretty quickly. But the next thing you can do to automate your searches is put them into a dashboard. You know that tagline, the single pane of glass. Well, this is Splunk's implementation of that. So it's easy to reference and look at these information at a glance. So all you're going to do is do that save as instead of report or alert. You just do a dashboard panel. And this is what you guys are going to be doing in your lab, is create these dashboards. So you're going to click save once you're going to develop a search, and then click save. When you click on new over here, you'll get a dashboard title right here. It'll automatically give you this dashboard ID, description if you want one. Then you have a panel title right here. So you have a dashboard, which is basically a screen. The panel is actually the little panel of the screen that this information is going to be displayed. So in this case, we're going to put it into connections denied, and we show it as a line graph over here. Then you'll, look at something like this when you do it. So all of this is customized. So once you create this dashboard, then you can go in here and say edit panels, and you can make it, you can change the visualization of it. You can change the axis, change the labels, etc. So that takes us to Lab 4. Users have reported that internet applications have suddenly gotten sluggish. That likely is caused by network bandwidth, so we'll probably take a look at that. And so we'll look at the proxy logs to determine how bandwidth is being used. Add the results to a new dashboard, and then add the searches from the previous 2 labs to the dashboard. So if you haven't completed those, then this probably is not going to do it. I need to go enable a script, which I'm going to go do right now. You guys go ahead and start up. I will we'll return in 15 minutes. Let's do it 13 minutes. That'll give us 13 minutes. We're going to come back at 55 past the hour. Sorry, that's rushing you guys. I just want to be able to finish up before you guys are leave before our 2 o'clock thing. So I'm going to go enable that that script, and we'll return at 55 or 5 till, and finish up the boot camp.
And hello all. I wanted to point out something at this time. You're going through these labs, and again, these labs are available to you till midnight Mountain Time, and obviously very valuable. And the nice thing about these labs is that they're generating data that we're searching on. But I wanted to point out that you can download Splunk for free. Takes no special permissions. You just go to the Splunk website. You can download Splunk for Windows, Mac, Linux, and you get 500 megs a day for free. So in your lab or even at home, I have friends that are doing this where they're Splunking their solar panels on top of their house. They're looking at their home routers and such. But you have all the functionality of Splunk for free, 500 megs a day, and you'll see on the website when you download it, I think you can even go over that 2 or 3 times within a 30-day period. And the only thing that happens if you go over it is you can't search it. But Splunk is very good and open about that. So, but of course, when you download it for home use, you need to get it on something that's generating log files. So again, everything that's available to you today is having data generated into it. But remember, you can download Splunk for free for personal use and learning. Hello everyone, this is Reed Blythe. Just thought I would mention something before we get started again. One other thing about Splunk, I mentioned that Splunk is free, of course. Splunk has a very large user community, and the user community posts many of their homegrown apps at Splunk. There is only a couple of applications beyond the licensing that you pay for. It's enterprise security, Outlook, things like that. But what most people do as they begin to play with Splunk is they will download these apps that are posted by others. Again, it's a large, very vigorous user community. And that's actually how most people get started with Splunk, is downloading apps and then basically manipulating the search strings and in the graphs and tables to their own liking. So just FYI, there is a lot to find out at the Splunk website and additional support. And with that, I think, Jim, you probably want to get going again, don't you?
Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and wrap it up since we only got about 4 more minutes. I'm going to stick around. I can go over some of the slides I just skipped, but I'm just going to go ahead and wrap it up for the people who have hard commits after this is over. So, we kind of looked at, this is a summary of what we did. We kind of looked at the Splunk overview. We looked really quickly at the Splunk architecture, search heads, indexers, orders. We looked at data collection from, different source types, things like that. We discovered discovery techniques, drilling down into Splunk, how to set up automation, Splunk apps. So, mainly this today was just an overview to introduce you guys to Splunk and maybe how you could use it in your organization. There's probably not a business or government organization out there that I don't think would not benefit from knowing a little bit more about their environment, which Splunk can help you do. Using those log files. Usually those log files are just, dropped on the floor and nobody ever looks at them again, but Splunk kind of gives you that ability to use them as a resource that they were meant to be. So today we kind of looked at, Splunk as a troubleshooting scenario to make sure things are operational. But there's other ways that you can use Splunk. Sometimes, a lot of businesses will look at their web data, look at a path that a user is taking through their website before, to try to say, hey, what's going on from, our user? Why did they drop off? What was in their shopping cart when they abandoned our website, and try to see how they can improve that business, relationship that you have with your customers. And use Splunk more in a business sense. A lot of folks will basically get Splunk in for a certain reason. Maybe it's security, maybe it's some type of IT operation. But once they do it, then other people start to say, hey, well, can't we use Splunk for this business analytics or this thing or that thing? So, there's just a lot of different ways that Splunk can be can help your organization. So this is the end. GTRI, that's who we are. We're providing this for a reason. We want to make sure we show you guys that we have expertise in Splunk. We do sell the licensing. The hardware that Splunk resides on, we sell that too. Professional services to implement. We sell training by some very good training crew. Scott Anderson, that guy I mentioned earlier, he's very good. Again, that lab's open until midnight Denver time. So hopefully you guys see some value in this, and Reed and I are going to stick around for a while. We might end up just kind of going back over Lab 4 since I didn't have a chance to do that. And if you guys have any questions or follow-up actions, we are going to stay here maybe 15 minutes or till the last person logs out and answer any of those questions. And so we thank you guys, and we appreciate your time today. Hope you have a good day.
Thanks all.